Welcome to episode 212 of the Engineering Career Coach podcast, the first podcast dedicated to helping engineers and technical professionals with both their personal and professional development. In this episode, we're going to focus on mentoring, why it matters, and how you can find a mentor even when a lot of great leaders in engineering are busy. There are still ways to get them to mentor or serve as a mentor for you. And in this episode, I'm going to share with you some points that I just picked up at a great conference I'll tell you more about, where I went to a panel entitled Mentoring Matters. I'm your host, Anthony Fasano. I am a licensed professional engineer who practiced as an engineer, but eventually decided I wanted to focus more on inspiring engineers rather than doing the engineering myself. So since then, I've written a book entitled Engineering Your Own Success and have traveled the world helping engineers. And through this podcast, myself and my co-host Chris Knutson try to bring you information that can help you succeed in every episode. Now, people had their doubts about this podcast taking off, but since inception, we've had close to 2 million downloads and have been cited by Forbes as one of the top 15 most inspiring podcasts for professionals. All right, so the basis of this episode is I recently attended a conference called the ACEC Tri-State Fall Conference. It was put on by ACEC New Jersey, ACEC New York, and ACEC Pennsylvania. If you're not familiar with ACEC, it's the American Council of Engineering Companies. It's a great organization that really helps to promote engineering companies, gets involved in a lot of legislative efforts, and just some really, really powerful leaders in ACEC, and a great opportunity for you in your career to be a leader. So I was invited to speak there. I did actually 3 sessions, and the room was packed. It was really, really good energy at the conference. But I also attended some great sessions, and the content for this episode came from a panel that I attended called Mentoring Matters: The Role of a Mentor in Helping to Chart Your Career Path. The panel consisted of some really, really experienced engineering professionals who I'll list off here in a moment, and they talked a lot about the importance of mentoring and how it helped them in their careers, and really gave a lot of great strategies that you can use in selecting, finding, and getting the most out of a mentor in your career. And I'm certainly going to share this episode with each one of them. I just feel that I haven't told all of them I'm doing this just because it's fresh in my mind from yesterday. I just got back and I want to put this episode together, but I can't imagine that any of them would be upset with me trying to share their great advice with thousands of engineering professionals to maybe help them find a mentor. So the panel consisted of the following professionals: Mike Venuto, who is a chief engineer at the Delaware River Port Authority; Robert Fisher, he's chief engineer at the New Jersey Turnpike Authority; Dana Hecht, program director at the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey; Bernie McNally, president of the U.S. Program and Construction Management Group for WSP USA; Eric Madden, deputy chief marketing officer at JMT; and Hina Patel, director of transportation at Jacobs Engineering. And these panelists, again, they gave their time to give sound advice and real stories about how mentoring have impacted them in their career. And I also want to just mention that Matthew Album, associate at Dewberry, facilitated the panel, and Matt did a great job. It was pretty tricky to kind of facilitate because there was, again, so many experienced people that were trying to get out so much good information. Hopefully what I've captured is some of it that I'm going to share with you in this episode. Now, what I'm also going to do in the Take Action Today segment at the end of the episode is give you advice on how you can get mentoring from a leader in your firm that's just too busy to mentor, because that came up in this panel several times as one of the biggest barriers. So don't worry, if you have someone that you want to mentor you, but they're too busy, I'm going to tell you what you can do to try to gain advice and mentoring from them in the Take Action Today segment of the show. I also just want to mention that we are currently doing a case study for our new diagnostic tool, the Current Management Abilities Potential, or CMAP diagnostic tool. What is CMAP? CMAP is the culmination of years of research that we've done through our own content, interviews, and help of an outside data analytics firm to try to understand what makes great engineering managers. And through our research, we've boiled it down to 4 key drivers. And what we're doing with the diagnostic tool that we're designing and that we're getting ready to launch is we're going to have a tool that companies can use or individuals can use as engineers to measure how they stack up versus these drivers that great engineers of the past have exhibited. And what this allows you to do as a firm or as an individual is focus your time and energy on developing the skills that you really need to develop. So maybe it's people skills as opposed to project management skills. And the results of the CMAP will help you do that. So we've talked to a lot of firms that use the DISC assessment, which is an assessment that can be helpful in some ways, but it's not built for engineers and it's not based around successful engineering managers, and CMAP is. So if you're interested in participating in a current case study that we're putting on where we're doing final tweaks to the tool, we're looking for 200 managers, a little less than that now because we filled some of the spots, but 200 managers to go through the CMAP in a 360-degree format where your reports and your supervisor will assess you, and we will provide you with some results, and we'll use the results also to tweak the tool a little bit. So if you're interested in getting this insight about yourself and being able to leverage it in your career, email Betty@engineeringmanagementinstitute.org. Again, that's Betty@engineeringmanagementinstitute.org, and we will put you into our case study. Excited about it. And also, I just want to mention that the next session of our Engineering Management Accelerator online workshop is coming up soon in mid-October. Go to engineer2manager.com and you can check out the details. That's a program that we do online. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it can help you as an aspiring engineering manager or a young engineering manager develop the skills that you don't learn in school: communication, networking, being productive as possible, building expertise in public speaking, and leadership and delegation. All right, so with that, let me get into the meat of the episode, the main segment, and go through some of the great advice that I received from each one of these individuals. And I'm going to kind of just talk through some of the main points and attribute them to the different panelists so that you can hopefully use them in your career to find a mentor. And here's a great quote that I found from Steven Spielberg to bring us into the episode. The delicate balance of mentoring someone is not creating them in your own image, but giving them the opportunity to create themselves. So I mentioned in the introduction, I gave you the details around the panel, the Mentoring Matters panel, and I gave you a little bit of a introduction to each of the panelists. Now I want to kind of dive into what some of the panelists said, and I'll kind of say their name and went through what I had from them, which, again, I'm going to give them credit for this completely, but I did feel that there were a lot of young engineers that I know that weren't in that room, and I wanted to get this information out there. So I want to start by highlighting a couple things that Mike Venuto from the Port Authority mentioned, and he mentioned that one of the biggest benefits to finding a mentor is avoiding making the same mistakes that people before you in your path have made. And I thought that was valuable because sometimes you can make a big mistake in your career that can cost you years of development. And he mentioned that when reaching out to a mentor, the way you can approach them is, listen, I want to be where you are in some years from now. And so I'm wondering if you would take the time to provide some mentoring to help me get there, whether it's formal, informal, a phone call, a get-together every so often. But it's a great way to ask. I mean, if someone asked me that way, like, I want to get to where you are now, can you help me? I think I would be really excited to help them with that. And he mentioned when you're reaching out to someone and asking them, what you could say to them is, what I really want to learn from you is what you did right to get to where you are today, and also what you did wrong. And again, I think when you're giving someone some tangible things that you'd like to get from them, it just makes it easier for them to commit to that. So I thought that that was extremely valuable. Another one of the panelists, Hina Patel from Jacobs Engineering, she gave some really interesting kind of feedback on her own experiences with mentors. And she was really kind of focusing on how mentors can really help you make career and life changing decisions and help you to see the different alternatives or consequences around your decisions. And she said, just frankly, that she wouldn't have become the leader that she is today if her mentor or mentors didn't believe in her. I mean, that's a powerful statement. So kind of having that mentor on the sideline with you that says, I know you can do this, and I'll equip you a little bit by giving you some tools and advice, but I know that you have the abilities to do this. And she also said that a mentor needs to know when he or she can't help that person anymore. So if you've mentored someone and they've gotten to a certain level, you might now say, listen, I've helped you to get to this point. You now need to find another mentor that has accomplished this and get help from them now. Hina also mentioned that she gave an example of one of these maybe life-changing decisions is for her when she had kids and she had to decide whether or not to go back to work or how long to take off, and she had a mentor help her with that decision. So these are some big-time benefits of having a mentor, and if you've ever thought about getting one but haven't, you might want to really, really consider it. The next one was from Robert Fisher from the New Jersey Turnpike Authority. He gave a very interesting analogy. He used the concrete analogy. Right? Concrete is made up of many things, sand, cement. And he said that if you don't have all the pieces of the concrete, there's kind of voids. And in your career, there could be voids. And the mentor can help to fill those voids by giving you information that you just don't have. And you can't be complete without that information. He also really recommended that you build a relationship with your mentor outside of work. Go out to lunch once in a while, meet in a social setting so you can really bond and talk through things together. And I found that to be valuable because I think you do need to really build a strong relationship to build a powerful mentoring relationship that helps really both parties. Rob also mentioned that engaging with professionals of different experience levels is really invaluable in your career, and I couldn't agree more. If you're always hanging out and talking with engineers your age, you're missing out on information that engineers that are more experienced or even less experienced than you can provide you with. Those different perspectives. Again, filling the voids, as he mentioned earlier. So when you're thinking about getting a mentor or a few mentors, maybe getting a couple at different experience levels can really provide a lot of value to you in your career. Next, Eric Madden from JMT. Eric really emphasized that mentoring programs or a mentor can be done through a formal or informal program. Just because your company doesn't have a formal mentoring program doesn't mean that you cannot find a mentor. Eric also mentioned from the mentoring side of things, if you are a mentor and you're mentoring someone, it can have a great impact on the leader that you become. And when you are mentoring someone, you have to remember that the protege that you're mentoring, he or she is watching you. And they're making decisions on how committed they're going to be to you and to the mentoring relationship. So it's almost like leading by example as a mentor. And at some points of the discussion, people were kind of talking about how mentoring and creating these kind of programs and support leads to retention in companies, which it certainly does. But Eric's point was that it can't just be about retaining. It has to be about helping the people that you mentor. All the other good things will come from that. But if you go into it just thinking about retaining employees, it will not be as successful as if you go into it just focusing on the individual and how you can really help that mentor or help the protege as a mentor to get to where they want to be. Bernie McNeely from WSP, he said something that really kind of resonated with me, which was all of the leaders in the engineering field need to step up and they need to commit to being mentors because it's going to help to cultivate a strong new generation of engineering professionals. And one of the biggest barriers that was talked about in the room was people not having enough time to mentor people. And so in the Take Action Today segment later on, I'm going to mention my solution for that. However, Bernie and really the sentiment of all the panelists was that can't be an excuse. Leaders in engineering need to commit to mentoring. They need to commit to helping others if they want to succeed. And I agree with that 100%. And last but certainly not least, Dana Hecht of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Dana was great. I had the chance to connect with her at the conference and talk through some of her career transitions. But on the mentoring panel, what she talked about that was really, really powerful was empowerment. By mentoring someone, you can empower them to do amazing things in their career, things that they may not have accomplished or even set out to do without you as their mentor. So just think about that impact that you're having. Imagine that you mentor an engineer that goes on to successfully run a large company that has a major impact on some aspect of this world, whether it's infrastructure, IT, or whatever the case may be. You played a role in that potentially. You empowered that person. And you can mentor multiple people and empower them. And to me, that was a very powerful aspect of the panel and what the panelists had to say. You have that ability. Will you use it? Or will you find someone to mentor you, to empower you? And so I hope that you enjoyed some of these comments. It was just a dynamite panel. I couldn't, come back to the office and not take my notes and somehow put them into some piece of content to share it with our listeners or subscribers. And I thought the podcast was a good format to do that. I will certainly be, again, sharing this with all of the panelists. I hope that they enjoyed that I shared this, and if they have anything to add to it, I can supplement the episode in some way, shape, or form. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back and wrap this up in our Take Action Today segment, where I'm going to try to give you my thoughts on how you can avoid kind of someone saying to you, I'm too busy to be your mentor. Now it's time for our Take Action Today segment of the show, and this is the part of the episode where we try to wrap up the episode and kind of leave you with a thought or action that you can take and implement immediately to take action and make progress in your career. Now, before I do that, I do want to just remind you, as I mentioned earlier, the next session of our Engineering Management Accelerator online workshop, which is it's a program that we give online for aspiring engineering managers or young engineering managers. That it's over 5 weeks, but it's about 1 to 2 hours of work per week. So it's not a lot of time commitment, but it can give you an amazing foundation in some of the management skills that you really need to learn to be effective as an engineering manager, including communication with your clients and team members, networking and building relationships, how to build expertise and leverage tools like LinkedIn, and also improve your public speaking skills, productivity and billability, and also high leverage leadership in the art of delegation. If you're interested, go to Engineer to Manager, that's engineertomanager.com, and check out the details. We've been doing it for years now. You could see the feedback from many of our participants there. You can actually sign up today and do it on demand and go through the entire thing. Or you can sign up for the next live session, which will start in mid-October. All right, so I mentioned earlier on in the show that one of the biggest barriers to finding a mentor in your career is time. What if all of the great mentors out there for you don't have the time to mentor you because they're busy people? They probably are. So you've identified this person in your firm. They're a great leader. They're someone in a position where you want to be in a few years, but you're nervous about asking them because you know they're too busy to mentor you, or they may have told you that they just don't have the time right now for individual mentoring. So here's what you can do. Ask if you can just tag along with them to a couple of meetings, or watch them in action at a client meeting, or speaking at a conference, or handling phone calls, or running meetings. When I was a younger engineer, I asked my boss if I could attend some public hearings with him. I asked if I could sit in on some client meetings. And you know what? Some nights I had to go with them to the meeting. I wasn't able to charge it on my timesheet. It was my own time, and I spent a couple of hours there. But when it came time for me to get up in front of the audience, that experience was invaluable. So in essence, my boss was mentoring me because he allowed me to tag along and watch him. And I was able to then take what I learned and mimic that in future interactions. And so I wanted to say this because a lot of times when you say to someone, you have to get a mentor in your career, the first thing that they visualize is a mentor being someone that they have to sit down with every couple of weeks or every week or get on the phone with periodically. It doesn't mean that. As one of the panelists mentioned in the main segment, that it can be informal mentoring as well, or observing. And so if you're running into barriers around people not having the time to mentor you, try to pitch them on just letting you observe or tag along with them to meetings. And I promise you, it'll be just as valuable as some of those direct mentoring conversations. Thanks again to ACEC, New Jersey, ACEC New York, and ACEC Pennsylvania for having me at the conference to speak. I enjoyed the programming and the conference really as a whole. I hope you enjoyed this episode today. Thanks to all of our panelists for taking the time to volunteer for that panel and provide that advice that I was able to share with our many listeners. We would love to hear your feedback, comments, and or questions on the episode. You can go to engineeringmanagementinstitute.org and look for episode 212 of the Engineering Career Coach podcast, and there you will find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources or websites mentioned during the episode. And don't forget to check out our upcoming session of the Engineering Management Accelerator at engineer2manager.com. Until next time, I wish you all of the best in your engineering career endeavors.